At the Herring Center for Inclusive Education at the University of Washington, we continue to be thrilled to partner with OSPI and our exemplary demonstration schools. Joining us today are inclusion specialists from the Herring Center for Inclusive Education. My name is Cassie Borges, and together with Monique Worthy, we will be guiding you through this webinar. Dr. Cassie Martin is also joining us today. Our project coordinator, Molly Lyman, is here in case you experience any technological issues. Before we dive in, let's make sure that we have everything ready to get started. Please test your audio in the bottom left-hand corner of the menu to ensure that you can hear us. As this presentation is in webinar format, all participants are automatically muted and there are no participants. Thank you for sharing comments and ideas in the chat. For questions, please use the question and answer function that you can find circled in magenta. The function is located in the lower control panel between the raise the hand and closed caption. This will allow presenters to more easily locate questions to answer while we share ideas and thoughts in the chat. In order for everyone to see your ideas, please make sure that your chat panel is set to all. We will be recording today's webinar, and it will be provided in addition to artifacts mentioned throughout on the Herring Center demonstration site's website. The recording from today should be available by the beginning of next week. And as we go through this webinar, we want you to please keep in mind webinar etiquette. We encourage a growth mindset where you're open to thinking about new ideas and willing to push yourself to grow. Thank you for joining us today and for being present, positive, and engaged. Let's go ahead and practice the chat. Take a minute to share what impact you hope today's webinar will have on your school's inclusionary practices. We will be able to reference this information later, and it will be useful for future planning. A friendly reminder that if you have questions, we will be doing our best to monitor and respond to the Q&A at the bottom of your screens. We'll pause here for a minute. And Mo, could you please read some of the comments in the chat as they pop up? I think everybody's still waking up this morning. All right, well, we will go ahead and move on, but Mo, if anything pops up, just go ahead and let me know. To start, here's a little background information about the Demonstration Sites project. In the fall of 2019, OSPI launched an inclusionary practice professional development project. The Herring Center partnered with OSPI to coordinate and lead this part of the larger statewide project, creating model demonstration sites that highlight inclusionary practices across Washington state. The demonstration site project was developed to provide educators from around the state with an opportunity to observe inclusionary practices in action, meet with school teams, collect artifacts that aid in systems change, and learn about how to implement inclusionary practices in different school contexts. Our demonstration sites highlight diversity in our state. They include urban schools, rural schools, and schools in some of our largest and smallest districts across Washington. In collaboration with the Herring Center Inclusion Specialists, the original and future intention of this project is for demonstration sites to host visiting schools to showcase and highlight inclusionary practices. By sharing these practices and opening their doors to teachers, administrators, families, and community members, it allows visitors to see best practices in action and apply them in their schools. At the same time, the demonstration sites themselves continue to grow their inclusive cultures and refine their practices that contribute to the equitable learning of all students. Clearly, right now, we have some constraints about literally opening our doors, but have been doing our best to pivot to continue to provide transformational learning using virtual platforms. And this is how you will hear today about Edwin Pratt's deep dive into an inclusive mission and vision. There are some founding principles that drive our model demonstration sites work. To start, in every school, there are things that are working well. In education, we have the tendency to examine problems associated with our practices. Instead of examining what's working well, why it's working well, and how we can use this information to make things better. This asset-based approach is a productive way for schools to leverage their strengths to become more inclusive. Also, inclusion is not a special education initiative, but a cultural shift in philosophy and practice. If we simply change the way we deliver special education services without considering the culture of the school or how all students engage in teaching and learning, we will never make the changes we need to truly impact student learning. Throughout the course of our webinar, and by way of scheduling virtual visits, districts, schools, and communities can learn more about what steps are taken to make these shifts in a more inclusive school. So let's go ahead and begin with some polling to see who's joining us today. We'll let that go for just a few minutes. It looks like we've got administrator and people from ESD. More administrators, great. That's awesome. Thank you guys for joining.
Cassie, Sherry Tucker said that she is not at a school site, but she works at OSPI and is interested in learning about inclusionary practices on all levels.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. All right, and our preschool demo sites have shared their amazing journey toward a more inclusive education for all students. These journeys occurred over a number of years and involved engaging in several high-stakes inclusionary practices. We received feedback from our participants and our demo sites that they wanted to take a deeper dive into implementation of a specific inclusionary practice. And this is our purpose today. Thank you for joining us as we take an in-depth look at an inclusive mission and vision with Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center in the Shoreline School District. Now it's my honor to introduce some of the team at Edwin Pratt Learning Center: Hillary, Courtney, Scott, and Stephanie. I'm going to hand it over to Hillary.
Thank you, Cassie. My name's Hillary Clark. I'm the Director of Early Learning in the Shoreline School District. This means that I oversee 3 early learning programs: Special Ed, Head Start, and a tuition-based program. I'm really excited to introduce you all today to our team. This team represents a lot of different staff that is making inclusion successful in our school and district. I do want to note that I am the only team member here who does not have a degree from UW, so sorry, UW. Courtney Ryan is our special ed teacher and instructional coach. She is a graduate from the EEU. Dr. Scott Edwin is a director of secondary student services. He and I co-led our district early learning committee. He graduated from the UW Leadership for Learning doctoral program. And Stephanie Gregorich is one of our early learning coordinators. Stephanie has done had many roles in our district early learning programs, and she graduated from UW with a degree in psych. So this is our building. We moved into the Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center about 2 years ago. Those of you in early learning, I know you're jealous to see this beautiful building. It was built with 24 classrooms, and it was built to be an inclusive school. So please come visit when we're back in person. We would love to show it off to you. So I'm going to read through our mission and vision that just give you guys the base of what we're talking about today, and you'll be learning how we got here and how it looks in our building. So our vision is to eliminate the opportunity gap by optimizing the foundational early learning years in an inclusive, equitable community where every child belongs and is supported in developing friendships and becoming a lifelong learner. Our mission is to provide high quality early learning experiences to all Shoreline and Lake Forest Park preschool age children. Our mission prioritizes underserved populations, inclusive learning, culturally responsive teaching, and working together with families. Now Stephanie will share with you how this mission and vision is an integral part of becoming the school we are today.
Thanks, Hillary. As Hillary mentioned, our inclusive mission and vision has been an integral part of becoming the school that we are today. The Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center is an inclusive, equitable community where every child belongs. We're located in Shoreline School District, and this past year we served over 500 students from 3 different programs. We had 111 students being served on an IEP, 284 tuition students, and 119 Head Start students. The students from these 3 programs are not just housed in the same building. We are a fully inclusive school. All of our students are blended and learning together in classrooms for the entirety of their time on campus. Next slide. This picture exemplifies our classrooms at Edwin Pratt Early Learning. This is what you'll see if you come to visit our school. Students from all of our programs spend their days learning together. Next slide. Next, I would like to introduce Sharifa. She is one of our preschool assistants, and she has recently joined our team. And I would just like to play her video and let her talk about her experience joining our team here at Edwin Pratt.
There's no sound. Do you have to unmute, Cassie?
Kids with disabilities, and they play together. Hi, my name is Sharifa. I work at Edwin Pratt as an assistant. The first time I walked into the building, what grabbed my attention is the diversity, either in staff or kids. If we talk about staff, there's like, it's so much diverse stuff from different culture, from different religion, from different countries of the world. It's like all the world is in here. If you go to classes, you see same thing, kids from different background, from different culture, from different country, from different religion, different skin color, teacher with, kids with disabilities, and they play together. They get the opportunity to play and learn from each other, learn from different languages. And what I really like about Edwin Pratt, they have like team of equity. They bring that knowledge about equity and how to help teacher to create activities or bring books to talk about including everyone and feel the sense of belonging and being kind and nice to each other. I think that's it. I had an opportunity to work before I started at Edwin Pratt in different centers, which are like private centers, but you see only like the high income kids. And rarely I worked with kids with different color or low income or disabilities, which is like makes the difference in Edwin Pratt. It's like you see the whole like world in one school.
Thanks to Sharifa. This next slide shows the student demographics at Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center. The pie chart represents the more than 500 students that we served in our program last year. And of these students, 55% were male, 45% female. Additionally, 24% were bilingual and 22% were served on an IEP. Next, Courtney will be sharing a little bit more about our inclusive school.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm gonna, talk a little bit more about where we're at today, and then we will dive into how we got there and how our inclusive mission and vision was a part of that. So as we've said, all of our classrooms at Edwin Pratt are fully inclusive, representing students across all 3 programs: Head Start, Early Childhood Special Education, and tuition-based preschool. The majority of students' IEP time is all provided in their classroom setting. And we have staff from 3 different unions who work in all of our classrooms together, teaming together, supporting all of our students, which can be really daunting at first, but we know that it's doable. And we know that it's what's best for kids. So we've really committed to making that work, and we're happy to share more about our experience there. Our current classroom models look like this, a little visual of that. We have, it's a little different this year, but last year we had 13 full-day classrooms and 12 sections of half-day classrooms. So this is just the typical makeup of kind of the blend of students in those rooms. And now I want to introduce another video. This is Pam Wright, one of our lead preschool teachers, who's been with our center for many, many years and has been with us through that transition. She was a preschool teacher, general education preschool teacher with the tuition-based program, and she stayed with us, and she's just going to share a little bit about her experience.
So inclusion-based that everybody could find a welcoming and a good place to send their child and know that they'll be taken care of and respected for who they are.
So why did we start looking at our inclusionary practices? So this is where we're at today, but it has been a long journey. So over the past 9 years or so, we've been taking small steps towards inclusion, trying out different pilot models. We started off, all the 3 programs we mentioned were all at different sites, all operating independently 9 years ago. Around 6 years ago, all 3 programs we're still at separate sites, and then Head Start, we were able to bring them in and start growing that program to the wing of an elementary school where our early childhood special education preschool was located. And then we had this amazing opportunity where our district, our greater Shoreline community passed a bond that included building a new early learning center. And that gave us an opportunity to implement inclusion to a much greater degree. At this point, with that passing of the bond, we really dove into developing an inclusive mission and vision, and that was instrumental in supporting our jump into where we are now. Hillary is now going to introduce our process of developing that mission and vision.
Thank you, Courtney. I love this picture. So our inclusionary practices that we do at Edwin Pratt, they overlap and combine, but for our purposes today, we're going to be highlighting and taking a deeper depth look at our inclusive mission and vision. So we, like Courtney said, we created our mission and vision because all programs were coming together under one roof, and we really wanted to make this an opportunity for change. Could we have moved into this building and put special ed in one wing and tuition-based in another and Head Start in another? We could have done that. That would have been a lot easier to do initially. But we, next slide, please. We got a charge from our superintendent to really look at our practices and what could be a possibility in our new building. So this was a little less than 4 years ago. She asked that we look at a possible mission and vision, increase capacity in all programs, looking at school readiness for traditionally underserved populations, really wanting to increase the equitable access here. And of course, we needed to have sustainable funding for this program. So with this charge, we created a committee. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this committee, we had roughly, I think this is 25 or 30 people. We had family and staff from each of the 3 preschool programs. We had some elementary representatives and a principal, a gen ed teacher, a special ed teacher. We had district admin. We had community members. So we had someone from a Birth to 3 program, as well as the Center for Human Services. And with this committee, when staff were invited or asked to be on it, they had to commit to attending all the meetings. We wanted these meetings to be taken very seriously because we were going to be digging very deep into early learning. And so all of these members committed to attend every meeting right off the bat. On the next slide is a video of one of our current staff members who was a former parent. So at Edwin Pratt, we often parents often become staff members, and she's going to share with you her experience on this committee.
The planning committee I was fortunate to be a part of was composed of community members and leaders, Shoreline School District administrators, board members, staff from various departments and school sites, including teaching staff from various early learning programs, as well as adult family members of past, present, and future students. This variety of contributors sincerely reflects the vision and mission statement we developed in the planning process, which centered around and continues to center around inclusion and equity. It was apparent from our very first meeting together that everyone had a voice and we would come to decisions collectively, not authoritatively. As both a parent of a former ELC student and a member of the Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center teaching team, I'm really proud of the work we accomplished and how it has all come together in real time over the past few years.
Okay, so logistics were a big part of making this committee and this mission and vision work. So when we invited people, we gave them our schedule. They knew we were meeting 7 evenings for 2 hours each. I think everyone in this webinar knows snacks are always appreciated. And so we definitely had good snacks, and then we did serve dinner one of the evenings. We also had childcare, we really wanted that preschool parent participation. And so that childcare helped make that accessible to families. I know this sounds like a weird logistic to point out, but the organization of knowledge was extremely important. So we had binders at the meetings with all the paper documents they'd received or notes they'd take. They had the option to take that binder home and bring it back. They had the option to leave the binder in the room. And then we also used Google Drive. So every meeting we would put the notes, the agenda into that Google Drive for all committee members to access. We also used the same room for every meeting. And in that room, we would keep up pertinent charts that we'd either created or were planning on sharing so that they would be up reminding us of past work we had done. Next, I'm going to pass it on to Scott to talk more about the process of the committee.
Thank you, Hillary. So one of the things we did before we actually started the committee is we met as a core group, and we wanted to kind of agree on how we were going to lead the committee and kind of our core principles of the work that we were going to do. And number one, we decided that we were going to focus on committee learning. And the way we were going to do that was that we wanted to focus on true committee engagement and doing that through processing through a variety of means. So thinking about like, what does effective adult learning look like? And that means not just lecture, but how do you engage adults and have them process? And so either through partners, table talks, small groups, doing share outs, charting, doing value voting, whether that might be through sticky dots, or maybe it's going through and underlining things that are on charts. And so just like Hillary said in the last slide, where we had that one room where we left the charts up. So key ideas were left on charts in the room so we could refer back to them. And so over time, the room became this area that showed all the learning we had done as a collective group. In addition, those binders became representative of the individual learning that folks had done. And so we really kept that at the forefront of our work. And then our third kind of core principle that we used in planning all of our work as a committee was that we did an intentional focus on best practice in early learning. We really wanted to think about what was our local expertise in all these different areas, and then what were the effective early childhood programs, and not just right around Shoreline, but in the broader area. So that kind of grounded our work before we even started with folks, but that we wanted to make sure that we agreed to those before we started so that we didn't have competing ways of working ahead of time. So that was really important that we all had that agreed to. So next slide. This slide represents the work that we did throughout our committee work over all of our meetings, and it looks very neat and pretty and concise when we look backwards. But I want to say that when you apply those principles that we talked about learning, we didn't have this all set out when we started. We had those core principles, and we knew we wanted to do some of that, but we didn't know what order or how it was going to go. And so this slide represents who came and spoke. And at the beginning, we knew we wanted to do around brain development and research. And so we had UW come in and talk to us. We knew we wanted to talk about equity. So we had an equity presenter from in our district come and talk. We knew finances were going to have an impact, but we didn't know were we going to have a presenter, how were we going to learn about finance, but we did. We also had somebody from the ESD come and speak. And then later on, we had Representative Ruth Kagi come in and speak. But some of these we didn't know exactly how and when, and it was based upon a lot of feedback that we got throughout the process, and based upon what, as we learned more, what our participants were saying, yeah, we need information from here or there. We did know that we wanted a program panel at some point, and so we did have that program panel towards the end. Next slide, please. So then our agenda, this agenda represents just one example of the type of planning that went into every single one of our meetings, hours and hours of planning. And we created our agenda focused on that committee learning, using protocols to balance the voices. When you have 25 to 30 adults in the room, you don't want the loudest voice or the person who has a big opinion to always dominate. So we wanted to really think about how to balance. And this agenda is an example of how we collaboratively created vision statements of what we wanted our early learning vision to look like. So it's just an example of how we did that. And so this will be provided as one of the artifacts that will be available for you. But it represents a lot of planning and a lot of forethought and thinking, how might we help our adult learners to process some information and work together best to get to that final product. So then, as we were working to create our vision and mission, the first thing that we needed to do as a committee was we had to define as a committee what was a vision and mission, because out in the research, there are multiple definitions in the literature. And ultimately, it didn't matter about what was the right one, but we as a committee had to agree to our definition. And so these were the definitions that we said we were going to work on. And so when we said our vision, that was our public declaration. It was that high-level goal for our future. What was our value? What was our belief? What was that hope of where we were going? And it was far out there. The mission, on the other hand, was what we said was our how-to and was our action plan of how we're going to achieve our vision. And so we moving forward.
Okay. Sorry, I lost you there at the end, Scott. So just diving a little bit more, so Scott referenced the use of protocols as being really critical to this committee work and really balancing the voices in the room, making sure that everybody's heard, that the quieter voices have space to be heard and the louder voices are balanced, and are really important in terms of really collaboratively working together, learning together, and coming up with vision together. And then also in terms of meeting the different learning styles of people. You know, some of us are more verbal, some more visual, and using protocols has really helped support those different styles. And I also want to just share this Groups at Work resource. I have, you know, my copy here that's all marked up and dog-eared and things, but by Laura Lipton and Bruce Wellman, and it's full of all kinds of different protocols to help meet different purposes, and I can't recommend that resource highly enough. We're now going to share a video of Ananda Scott, one of our former preschool parents. She has a daughter with an IEP, and share her experience as being a member of the committee.
Hi, I'm Ananda Scott. I was on the Mission and Vision Committee for Shoreline's new preschool. To this day, that was one of the most meaningful experiences I've had in this district. The conversations were very rich and we're very proud of the end results. The reason I think it was so successful, there were a couple things. Scott and Hillary did a fantastic job of providing us real information. Education shouldn't be sort of a bunch of people's opinions, right? We needed to be able to look beyond our own personal experiences and district procedure and policy and have real evidence-based information on early childhood and best practices for early childhood education, and also in equity. We really had a strong focus on equity throughout. One of our first speakers was Dr. Brandon Felder, who runs our Race and Equity Department. And so it was very important to us that we keep that lens in mind as we looked at all of our options. But so we were given a ton of information. So we weren't just coming from a place of our opinions and our experiences. We were coming from a real knowledge-based place of what is possible and how to do it and what is best practice. And then we were really empowered. Scott and Hillary were really brave, I think, particularly Hillary, because she was going to be running this preschool, in honoring that the work of this committee was going to be how the preschool operated and what it was going to look like. And we really knew that we were doing work that mattered, that was going to be implemented and affect the lives of children. And so we were very passionately invested because what we were doing mattered. And they gave us tools and structure so that we could have meaningful conversations, but they never let the tools or the structure dominate the process. The content was always the most important thing. So everyone, I think, felt heard. Everyone contributed, and we were, because of the education we got, the knowledge that we had, and then the empowerment that we had, we just had a really invested group of people who produced something we were very proud of, which is important because then we went out into the community representing these different groups that we had come from and became advocates for the new preschool, which is also an important component, I think, to its success going forward. Thank you.
All right. So as Ananda said, and as Scott, shared our lofty list of speakers and things, we really grounded the work in a shared learning, a foundation of knowledge, and then layered these protocols and things on top. And this is just an example of one kind of a quick activator as people are transitioning into the meeting, leaving work or, there are other things behind and kind of getting engaged. And so we would just have something like people complete the sentence. Early learning is like and then they had to choose one of these 4 animals because, and then they kind of gave their own why. So I can give an example, and if you want to humor me, if you want to write in the chat your own version, that would be fun to see. So like early learning is like a lion because it can be noisy. But it makes a big impact. It's really important work that we're doing. If people want to take 1 second and kind of write their own thought in there. And then on our next slide here, another example of just kind of how we're use of protocols during our meetings. But, I think as Scott or Hillary mentioned earlier, we did really leave our artifacts up around the room for people to refer back to. So we might have people kind of go back to those, review the charts that we had created before. And then this is an example of a question we'd we had people think about what would the Early Learning Center look like, feel like, and sound like in 20 years. So, you know, in working on that vision and mission, we really wanted to have that big picture thinking for people. So really trying to get people to think long-term, and kind of using their different senses to think about that. And instead of just writing down some words, we kind of want to, again, tap into some, get people to think outside of the box, kind of tap into different ways of learning, different ways of thinking, and had people individually draw a pictorial representation, and they could use some labels. And then we came together in small groups, and then came back and shared out as our different posters and things in large groups. And then from there, looking at, okay, so here are all our different posters. What are the common attributes that all of our visions, our pictures are sharing? And so that kind of helped us start to develop kind of some of those key words, key components that we really wanted to include in our vision and mission. I am now going to pass it back to Scott, who's going to share a little bit more about our meeting process.
Thank you, Courtney. And I just wanted to also just thank the people who put in the chat about just responding to that analogy, because one of the things is, as you read and hear about how other people think about early learning, it makes you think differently about your own beliefs, and it starts these conversations, and you start going, oh, I didn't think about it that way, or oh, I think about it that way too. And that was the process that really starts the things going in our committee, is that we started seeing what were the differences and what were similarities among all of us. And we all had different perspectives. And so that was really the power in this work, is as we learned more, we started coming together. And so as we did this work, we also wanted to provide structures for people to do this learning and do their thinking. So another structure besides the charts or the binders, we also provided these note-taking guides. And they're very simple, but we wanted to give 2 different note-taking guides. So anytime we had a speaker come in, we said, here they are. One was called the 3-2-1, and it was 3 ideas, 2 wonders or questions, and 1 key idea on one. And then the other one was just structured in a different way, a table, key ideas, wonders, questions, and then wows, or can't even read it exactly. And then at the bottom, it was most important point. But we just had stacks of those. And so then after we had taught it one time, they knew that they could come back each time and just reuse that. And then they take notes, put it in their binder. And then when we'd say, all right, it's time for us to go back through our ideas and think, what were those big ideas from all of our different speakers now that we're going to do some vision work or mission work? Go look through those ideas. Use your notes to think about what we want to do. Use those notes, use the charts on the wall. We had artifacts that they could actually go and dig through. So it didn't take us a lot of time to actually create all new guides for them to take notes on. So a small thing, but it really did help. When it came to our preschool panel at the end, we did do a different type of guide for that, just because we had 3 different groups and we just wanted to focus their thinking and their processing a little bit differently. So this was just another example of a note-taking guide. One of the things we just wanted to do was just give a little bit of structure to how they could think through. Many of you have seen Wordles before, and one of the ways in which we used Wordles throughout this committee was to bring lots of ideas from the 25 to 30 folks together. And so this was an example of how earlier Courtney talked about how we had everyone's vision for early learning 20 years in the future, and she had them write down those common attributes. across all their pictures. Well, afterwards, we took all of those and collected them after the meeting. And then we went and typed them into a word cloud and brought that back to the next meeting. So this word cloud is an example of how everyone's ideas on the entire committee are represented moving forward. And so while this doesn't represent the vision, it is one way of presenting collective ideas. And so we used it in multiple ways. So it was for the vision statements, the mission statements, in different lists. And it helped us to show the importance, because the bigger the word, the more times it was done, committee members referenced it. It also showed commonality. It also showed unity. And it's a great tool, especially when you have big groups like this. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it is a nice way to bring folks together. And it even works in a remote setting. And then, as I talked about, we gathered feedback from folks at the end of every meeting to help inform our next steps. And this was a real high-tech way. We passed out 3x5 note cards. And we just said, what questions or comments do you have? And this was a really great tool. Again, you can modify it now and just use a Google form if you want to do it in a remote setting as well. But I think just having that ongoing feedback loop was really important, because we would take our committee questions, any comments that they would have, we'd take that really to heart. And we'd sit down afterwards, our core team, and we'd go through that information. We'd look at that, we'd look at all of the charts and what things that they turned in, and we'd use that to not only plan out the following week's committee meeting, but also look at long-term, who are the next people that we need to come in? What information do we need to gather and bring back? What data do people need? Because sometimes it was, I'm not sure what the words were, or what was this idea or concept, or what are the demographics here, or why do we do this? And so it was nice to just have that ongoing feedback loop for our committee. So it can be as high tech as you want, but feedback or just having normal note cards works quite well as well. So, all right, I'll hand it back over to Hillary.
Hillary, before you continue, Sherry said early learning is like an elephant because treating each other and caring about each other is a good way to build community. And Devin said that learning is like honeybees because everyone is busy doing something that benefits their community.
Love those. Thank you guys. So I'm good. This is our whole finished product here. Initially, I just shared the mission and vision with you all. But you'll see on the top is the vision and mission, and underneath we created pillars because we knew we wanted to include more than just the vision and mission to provide examples of how to get to that vision and mission. So our 3 pillars were equity and inclusion, teaching and learning, and family engagement and outreach. And then under each of those pillars, there's just bullet points of ways to do that. So tuition assistance for equity and inclusion, professional development for teaching and learning. We needed to get to a single streamlined application. That was a family engagement and outreach. So that list there was kind of the more detailed approaches to get to that mission. And so our school board approved that document in 2017. Scott and I did present it, and they voted unanimously to approve that. And so that allowed us to start really planning our inclusive programming for our new building. Okay, so please go back one. Thank you. So this is our vision and mission. You'll see on the right side, it says votes. So when we started our committee, the first day we talked about what percentage of votes will we need to pass pass anything we're voting on. We did vote on quite a few things. Clearly, we hit whatever percentage that was. These are high voting percentages for yes here. And the gifts of support meant maybe it wasn't their first option, but they weren't going to be mad or block the progression of using that mission or vision. I think a couple of these actually someone was absent. So that gift of support was not a no, but it was a, okay, we can live with it. Also, I just want to point out on this vision and mission, some really intentional language this team used. That in that vision, we said early the foundational early learning years. We knew that this school was built for 3 and 4-year-olds. This was not built for kids that were 5 that were being held back for kindergarten. This committee was focused on decreasing that opportunity gap. And with Head Start and special ed, we do not hold students back. So if we were to accept kids that were kindergarten age, it would only be those tuition based. And so this was very intentional that our school does not serve students that are kindergarten age. We want to make sure we have space for those new kids that are 3 as well. Another intentional language we used is under the mission, those early learning experiences. Would we have loved to have said preschool for all in Shoreline and Lake Forest Park? You bet, but we didn't have the space to do that. So we thought about, could we be offering play and learns here that our birth to 3 providers provide? Yes, and we've started doing that. Can we be connecting with area preschool and childcares to offer professional development or partnering? Yes, we can do that. So that early learning experiences doesn't mean everyone on campus for preschool. It's what ways can we support early learning in our district? Next slide, please. Thank you. And so these are our 3 pillars here. And this helps break it down and not make it not too overwhelming. So we, as a school, we've been working on these in different capacities, the pieces on these lists, and they're a real big part of our school culture here. So what did we learn along the way? And this is specifically about this early learning committee with vision and mission. So one thing we did is we made sure the terms were clarified. Not everyone in this committee was an educator, so we wanted to make sure that they knew what we were talking about when learning about this. As I said, you can't beat snacks. They are very important to a successful committee. We did have representatives from different staff and parent groups, and we were very intentional about placing them. So Scott and I did name cards similar to a wedding party where we placed people at different tables every time. So we had those inclusive groups, different people could get to know each other in different perspectives. And then that group learning, as we've said over and over, was very, very intentional and very successful with this group. Next, I'm gonna pass it on to Courtney.
So we did all this work to develop this mission and vision, which I'm really proud of. And we didn't put it in a box somewhere. It continues to be a really actively used document. It's displayed in our building. We use it to communicate our school's purpose to the greater community, to families, including possible grantors, which has been helpful. It helps us continue to set goals as a school and prioritize professional development. I think because it was developed by so many different stakeholders, such a diverse group of stakeholders, it's really had the ability to provide a really solid basis for all of our work that everybody can really get behind and feel good about. Yeah, let's see. And it really represents who we are as a center now. And it helps us continue to, as we communicate and really live who we are. It draws new staff and new families in who really share that vision and mission, who are really excited about having their child be in an inclusive center, who are really excited that about our commitment to equity and closing that opportunity gap. And then I think growth is really, it's been a part of this whole process, is developing the mission and vision, and also really continues to be a part of who we are. And I think Cassie pointed that out in the beginning too, that growth is really part of that, kind of having an inclusive culture. And these components here are some things that we continue to focus on now that fall under those pillars and have also been identified as staff as priorities. We're looking at that universal design for learning, using AAC in inclusive settings, really digging into that race and equity work, which is something our whole district is really committed to and preschool is very much a part of, and then partnering with all of our families. And then again, just to kind of review and have them stick in our brains, we really highly recommend the Groups at Workbook as a helpful reference in doing this work, and any collaborative work or structuring meetings and things. It's an awesome resource. We're including that superintendent's charge, which can provide a good basis for ideas to launch this work in your community. That sample agenda, mission and vision, and note-taking forms. Feel free to take those documents, adapt them for your own purposes. We are more than happy to share. And then just as we wrap up, our takeaways, that having a diverse group of stakeholders take the time to collaboratively develop a solid mission and vision. It was a lot. It was a lot of people. It was, 7 meetings, a couple hours each. And it was really worth it. And it really has provided a framework for our whole community to get behind, and has really set the tone and shaped the culture of our center.
Other takeaways that are important that we want to highlight are, using those different protocols and processes to help balance those voices, and thinking about how do we do individual, partner, small group, whole group, and how do you manage and help bring these different folks together and do that learning, but also bring them together in a way that's authentic. And so thinking about all those different processes. And then again, accessibility for all those team members, whether it's childcare, thinking of the needs of the team members. For us, it was meetings held in late afternoon and evenings, but again, for a different group, there might be different needs. And so thinking of what is the accessibility for your group, because it's really important that your group represents the people who will be the people who will be impacted by the decisions that are being made.
It was learning to establish common ground. Because our committee was such a diverse group of individuals, it was important for us to establish common ground so that we could ensure that we were coming together collectively to develop a vision and mission that was developed based on evidence-based practice in early learning.
And in thinking about our program being inclusive, getting to it being an inclusive school was not easy and quick, but worth it. But speaking about the mission and vision specifically, that was not easy and quick, but worth it. So I hope it's clear. We spent a lot of time planning these meetings, being very intentional throughout the meetings, and looping back to questions people had or more information they needed, which was not quick and easy. But now that we have this mission and vision that is so powerful and we all are clearly very proud of, it was definitely worth it. So.
Thank you, Edwin Pratt. I would like to give a tremendous thank you to the Edwin Pratt Learning Center for sharing an in-depth look at their inclusive vision and mission. So let's use the chat and talk about some possible, what are some systems, cultures, or leadership practices that you heard about today that support inclusive schools? And what are some initial steps that you can take back to your school environment? I'm gonna give a couple minutes for people to utilize the chat. For me, it was the accessibility of knowing that some parents need childcare to be collaborative and addressing that and knowing that, and snacks. I don't know a person in the world who does not love snacks.
Oh, I was excited every meeting time. You know, I don't go out to the store and buy Doritos, but boy, was that little bag of Doritos I got at that meeting. I'm like, yeah, just really got me off to a good start.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
Cassie Martin says she loves the strength and process, and that it wasn't a process for process sake, but rather, sorry, you guys are popping up pretty quick for you. Sorry. But rather there were outcomes and moved things forward, and it was organized in such a way that made folks feel valued and part of the group. As we say, inclusion is inherently collaborative. And Marie said, engaging the larger community and having varied perspectives and taking the time to lay that groundwork. So another thanks to the team at Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center for taking us on their journey so far and highlighting some key inclusionary practices. Here are names and contacts to reach out with any additional questions. The information will also be available when we post these webinars on our website. Let's see if there's any more chats. Cody said, collaborating with community and partners, including everyone in the process, was also a key takeaway. To learn more about the Demonstration Sites Project and the OSPI Inclusionary Practices Professional Development Project, please visit these websites or feel free to email us at ippdemosites.org. Also, visit our website where we'll be posting a recording of this webinar along with a folder with the resources and artifacts presented today. So if you are able, please open in a separate browser using the link above. With this link, you should be able to click on the map and show us where you are joining us from. Do your best to get as close as possible, but if you don't have access to a separate browser, or if your location is not represented on this map, place your location in the chat and we'll be happy to add it in later. See, there's some people from Leavenworth, Washington, ESD 113. Let's see more. All right. We would love to get feedback about our session today. This will give us information we can use to effectively share demo sites, inclusionary practices in a webinar format in the future. Please click this link and fill out a brief survey through Google Forms. This survey is anonymous. Molly will send clock hour forms to those who were in attendance after the webinar. Thank you to OSPI and CSTP for their partnership in this project. Another thanks to Edwin Pratt Early Learning Center for their inspiring work. Thank you all for joining us today to learn about inclusionary practices and envisioning how you might take some of what you learned today and apply it in your schools. We hope you will join us in future webinars and that when our doors open again, you will take advantage in person, visiting our school states demonstration sites. Thank you again.
And it looks like the map may not have been working. So if you want to go ahead and place your location in the chat, we can add that in and add it to the presentation before we put it on the website. Thank you guys so much.
Someone said they were also from ESD 121.
a great presentation, guys. We've got some from Wapato School District and ESD 105. And thank you, Scott, for putting that Groups at Work book in there, again, by Laura Lipton and Bruce Wellman. Thank you, Rena Marie. Thanks for being here.